Hello and welcome to day 14 of Vlogmas. Let me introduce you to Exercise Julie. I've just been to the park for my outdoor exercise class and I thought while I'm here I might see if I can forage a few bits and pieces to take home and make a simple table arrangement ready for the festive period. Now there's a few rules about foraging. You shouldn't be foraging on private property or places that are designated as special habitats for wildlife, and you shouldn't be trespassing. I might have said that already. And really you should only be picking what you need for your project and definitely not picking bags and bags and selling it on. So let's have a look around the park and see what kind of things you might want to look out for if you're going foraging this festive season. Perhaps one of the first things you need to do is just scan your horizons and get to know your neighbourhood. Can you see the Scots pine trees over there? A good source for pine cones, but also pine needles and evergreen foliage. What do you see on the left hand side? I spy a holly bush, and it hasn't got many berries on, but it's quite likely, as it's next to the path, perhaps some other people have been along clipping all the good bits. And rather interesting about holly is the new growth, well particularly on this variety of tree, doesn't have any prickles on it, but as the tree matures you get the classic prickles, and quite often I stay away from holly because it's just too difficult to work with, but it does look beautifully glossy and of course just says Christmas. Here we have some variegated holly, so if you want to bring in a different colour, or perhaps you prefer the traditional dark greens, let me know in the comments. Would you go for traditional holly or the variegated variety? This is Old Man's Beard, the wild clematis, which has gone to seed and started to, well, it's gone to seed. It looks absolutely glorious, and you probably notice these in the hedgerows near you. The only problem is it shatters really easily. I have tried spraying sections with hairspray, but it didn't really keep the clematis together. So those lovely fluffy heads are probably best admired on your winter walks. Leave them on the hedgerow and think about something else to bring indoors. And no, this isn't Christmas tree foliage, this is yew, which is a really good substitute for the Christmas pines if you haven't got a fresh Christmas tree that you can cut from. Let's see what the squirrel's doing. Can you see him nibbling away? I wonder how close I can get before he scarpers. And here's the pine tree I could see in the distance. Now the best time of year for collecting your pine cones is always the height of summer because no one else is looking for them. Collect them when they're tightly closed and they'll soon open up indoors. This is a pretty foliage. It looks to me as if it's some kind of Elaeagnus, lovely and silvery on the underside and glossy oval shaped leaves. Looks quite similar to bay, but the bay is aromatic. I've spotted some spotted laurel or aucuba. Another lovely glossy green foliage. You'll probably need a wash if you pick a few of these stems, but just be careful with the laurel, whether it's the spotted one or the large leaved ones, because really the leaves can be a little bit too big and slightly overwhelming in your flower arrangements. And then some lovely autumn colour. Looks absolutely fabulous here, but these are leaves that are just waiting to drop, and you'll just end up with twigs in your arrangement and all the leaves on your tabletop. We're underneath the pine tree here, and these are the pine needles, so if you're into quite contemporary flower arrangements, I sometimes collect these and use the individual pine needles to decorate some of my more modern displays. Ideally, I think they look better when they're fresh and green, but you could always take a handful and spray paint them. Shall I take it home with me? Why don't you decide and let me know in the comments whether you'd pick this up or leave it behind. I found this green stem on the floor which looks slightly more enticing than the dried out Scots pine. So I could pull off those pieces and just give them a quick wash off under the tap, just to get rid of any mud, dirt and grime. One tree I recommend you get to know is the silver birch tree with a distinctive white stem. This isn't particularly white, but I like to know where the silver birch trees are in my neighbourhood. The branches I find are really handy, either for making the bases of a twiggy door wreath or to support any indoor flowering bulbs you've got. And they fall off the tree quite easily, and after a storm you'll quite often find them underneath the tree and you can just collect a handful. And we're still quite near the pine tree, and look, I have finally discovered a pine cone. So things like this, if you're desperate, don't discard it. You can give it a quick wash and brush up when you get it home, and then put that in a bowl and it will open up in absolutely no time at all. Look at this tree, the feathery larch with tiny, tiny pine cones. That would look so lovely to bring home, lovely feathery Christmas tree foliage, but I just suspect that the needles will shatter off once they're in the warmth of your living room. So sometimes nature is just best left outside to enjoy. This is what I've been looking for. We found the holly and now the ivy. So this is the buried ivy, buried in the sense that it has berries on it. These clusters are quite green, and some varieties they'll mature to a very dark black colour. And if you want to make a twiggy base for your door wreath, how about thinking about some weeping willow? You'll need to trim off all the green, but you should be able to do that quite easily with your hands. Just take the stem in one hand and slide your hand down with the other. I'm sitting under another silver birch tree, and sometimes it's like bird watching. You just have to sit and get your eye in. Take your time. Look, here's a branch. It's fallen off the tree. I love them because they're so soft and supple. So although this one isn't long enough to bind into a lovely door wreath frame, a nice circle, it will certainly look lovely added into one of my flower arrangements. I can leave it bare, or I can paint it silver or gold, whatever colour you like, or even with my potted hyacinths and some of my narcissi that I showed you on day 2 of Vlogmas. Some of them are really, really growing up now, and I might have to start putting some twigs in to support the extra growth. And there's another silver birch tree with its distinctive white bark on all those lovely flimsy branches waiting to fall down in the next high winds. And can you see the branch there hiding in the nettles? I'd certainly be picking that one up and taking it home. And these weeping willow branches have already lost their leaves. So if you picked from here, you wouldn't even have to defoliate before you made your Christmas door wreath if you wanted to use a willow twiggy base. I'm very nearly home now. I have walked, I know, 4 kilometres and back, and actually I've done 8,000 steps this morning, so I'm well on the way to my 10,000 steps a day goal. And in terms of foraging, I've come home with the green Scots pine needles, a little bit of the silver birch leaves that I saw on the floor, and you know me, the elephant in the room. I went to the charity shop on the way home and I bought this. I think it's a plastic polystyrene base. It sounds hollow actually. A gold glittery reindeer, which will be getting a makeover, so watch this space. And then also this, a metal bread bin with no lid for 50p. I reckon I can scrape off the decal there that says bread, give it a really good clean, and that will make a great pot for perhaps some of the larger Christmas trees I've got. or to fill up with greenery to put on my table as a centrepiece. So that's all from me for now. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to catching up with you tomorrow.